Hello, everyone, and welcome to our small conference, Road to Successful Office 365 Governance. My name is Tony. I'm co-founder and CEO of Syskit, and I'll be your today's host and trying to make you deliver, to listen and deliver all these sessions. And we are going to hear from some great speakers concerning Microsoft 365 tools, of course, but also we are going to focus on topics relating to governance, reporting, analysis, adoption, and everything that concerns all these different workloads that are available within Microsoft 365. So today, speakers, we have three exceptional Microsoft 365 MVPs, and they are going to deliver their sessions over the course of this webinar. And you'll be able to hear from top world-leading experts that are going to tell us a little bit more of their specific topics and specific workloads in just a couple of minutes. Just to remind everybody, we are going to have a recording of this available to you. So once we end the webinar and we do all our editing, you will be able to receive that, and we are going to send you an email with a link so you can download and maybe listen to some of the details that you missed, or if you need to leave for a short while, you'll be able to get a recording. Okay, so before we start, just a couple of words regarding our company. Syskit is an independent software vendor. We produce various tools that help administrators and managers manage Microsoft 365 estate. So from all different topics regarding governance, adoption, analysis of usage, helping you to prevent sprawl of the content, helping you detect some anomalies, better manage your external users, your internal teams, and everything else. So our tools are here to help you govern the entire estate. We are going to see a couple of demos during this session from some of our colleagues that are going to help you and show you what we can do for you and in your estate related to specific problems regarding Microsoft 365. Okay, so recording will be available. Don't forget that. Don't forget to post your questions in the Q&A box. So if you have any questions just during the session, post them in the Q&A box, and then we are going to ask those questions to the speaker once their session is done, and you will be able to participate in these conversations if you have some specific questions that you want to dig into and get more understanding of the particular technology that's being explained. Okay, so I think I'm ready to switch to my intro keynote slides. So just give me a second here while I share my screen. So this is it. So let's wait for that to load up. Okay, so as I said earlier, the topic of the day is Road to Successful Office 365 Governance. We are going to talk about different aspects of the topic. And in this intro session, I would like to discuss a little bit more about, of course, COVID-19 pandemic and the entire shift of our working habits in 2020. So currently, we are in the year 2021. The year has passed since COVID pandemic started, and we need to look into how our IT organizations are reacting and adopting to the new ways of working, to the new ways of how do we deal with pandemics and stuff like that. So a significant time has passed since we started this journey, and let's look into
Tony, Tony, we can't hear you.
Hello. Can we just verify that? Yeah.
Yep, everything's
great. So let's go back to the slides. Sorry, so we had a smaller technical audio issue, but we have a backup ready, so we'll go back. So let's go back. So as I said, the topic of the session is let's examine what has happened since the pandemic started and how the changes that happened in 2020 are going to affect the way we work in 2021 and going forward. So if you look at some data that I have compiled from various sources, Gartner, for example, in 2020, when they did a survey of various IT companies or companies across the globe, they found out that there is still 365 million desktop computers being used across companies worldwide. So when the pandemic started in early 2020, we still had 365 million people that had desktop computers where companies had significant challenges in moving those people to work from home while they were not able to go to the office and work there. Yet in 2020, in the span of just 1 week or a little bit more, close to 1 billion people moved to work from home instead of working from the office. So this is something a fairly significant change that in a span of very short time allowed many companies to still operate during lockdowns and all the pandemic measures that were in place in their countries. So moving the 1 billion people to work from home definitely was a significant challenge for IT organizations, for the leaders in those companies that had to enable them to have adequate technology that allowed them to work from home. Now, with the deployment of COVID-19 vaccines and lockdowns ending in majority of countries worldwide, the question for IT leaders is what is next and how do we adopt to these new things, to new normal, and how do we change the way we work within our organization? And of course, in our own sessions, we are going to see how Microsoft 365 technologies can help us in order to achieve that. Gartner also found out that 70% of organizations in 2020 invested in some sort of a cloud technology, either being one of these public clouds that allow us to do more communication and more collaboration. And many of these leaders in these companies believe that this entire COVID pandemic as an event is going to help them further accelerate the digital transformation and changing of the way we work using these modern technologies and modern approaches that we have in the systems. So when we analyzed which technologies are the most commonly used for just the collaboration or communication segment of the work, Zoom comes in as the first contender. They have been used by 36% of people in the United States in 2020, followed by two Microsoft applications, Microsoft Teams, which we are going to focus on today, and of course Skype. There are other vendors, and we are going to look into how they reacted to pandemic and how they look into changes that are going to happen in the workplace, like Google Hangouts or Slack. So when we adopted working from home, the question is, what were those drivers that made the change significant, successful, and what did we do so that companies were succeeding in adopting work from home in this new normal environments? So in Slack, they analyzed what their customers are doing and how they are using their Slack technologies to better communicate. And Slack identified three key trends that are very important for being successful when we are working from home or working in a hybrid environment. And one of these things is agility, so adopting fast to change, being more adopting more risk and making decisions faster. So that's one of the key things that Slack customers are identified as one of the drivers of success for themselves. Also, in this new normal and the new type of communication, it is important that the companies stays a little bit more flat, so that the communication between teams and team leaders is easy and flat and available in the communication technology that you have chosen, It could be Slack, it could also be Microsoft Teams or Google Hangouts or whatever your company deploys as their communication tool. Also, the communication is more asynchronous now when people are working from maybe from home or some other office, and there is no ability for them to like interact face to face, but have to use different technologies like Slack in this case, where the communication is asynchronous. So you send a message and you need to wait for some time for it to get a response and things like that. So it is important that you have such a place where you can do communication like that. Slack also believes that the age of office, the way we worked in 20th century and 21st century, is slowly coming to an end. So if you look at this picture of a typical daily commute where people traveled many, many miles to get to their workplace, they were stuck in traffic, they spent a lot of times, a lot of hours during the day just to commute. Many technology vendors still think that COVID-19 pandemic is going to be the driver of change to change that, because so much time can be saved if we are closer to the place where we can work. So if we can eliminate a lot of these commutes, many people can benefit from that. And then while preparing for this talk, I found this statement from Richard Buckminster Fuller, who was an architect and system theorist, and he said that majority of our time we are not using the resources we have. And if you read this, it looks as if he said this in 2020, because in 2020 we really realized that we are not using the resources we have, like our homes and our office buildings, all the time, and they are kind of not being used. But when I dig deeper, I found out that actually this statement is from 1970s. So in 1970s, he was already thinking about these things, how we can improve the quality of our life, basically by utilizing resources that we actually have, like our homes and living rooms, and to utilize them further, like we did in 2020. So let's look into the future and see how the leading corporations, the leading technology corporations of the world, are looking into the future of work once the COVID vaccines have been widely adopted. So Gartner did a survey. They surveyed some of the largest corporations around the world, and they found out that 90% of these corporations believe that they are going to allow for people to still work from home or work remotely or work from anywhere, basically, even once the COVID vaccines have been widely deployed. So they are still going to continue to allow people that are in these particular roles that can continue to work from home to continue to do so in the future. Some of the technology companies, leading technology companies around the world, have adopted a little bit more, say, extreme approach, where Twitter declared that they are going to allow their workers to work from remote or work from home forever. So they're really looking into giving their workers a flexibility in order to choose the place and the location where they want to work and how they want to work in the future. Some other technology leaders, like Spotify in this example, believes that they will be able to lure the best talent by giving them the benefits they used to give in their New York and San Francisco offices. So that means high salaries, and still be able to attract talent across the globe without having to bring them directly into their offices in New York or San Francisco. In some of the larger corporations like Microsoft, they also want to bring flexibility to their workforce, and they are aware that they won't be able to do it for everybody, because there are some specific roles that are tied to infrastructure and that have to be present in the office. But they still believe that most of Microsoft employees will be able to enjoy the ability to work from home 50% of the time. So it seems that many of these corporations are aiming to bring us something new, something they call hybrid way of work. So this means there will be an office, but it will be used slightly differently from what we were used to before pandemic, especially if you were not into remote work before that. So Google thinks that a hybrid way of working is going to be a mixture of working from home and working from the office, but in a way where we are going to connect in the office to do things like debates, brainstormings, coming up with new ideas, but focused work and things that you need to do like on your own are probably going to be conducted in some different settings. So this is how Google is adopting their products, so especially Google Workplace, which is their collaboration platform, and they are adopting this platform to bring more features that are going to allow for companies to succeed into doing this new hybrid work. Slack believes that the key things that are important for hybrid work are going to be your mobile and mobile technologies like your cell phones and laptops that are going to allow you to work from anywhere, but also in the companies. Companies should invest into especially cloud computing, or if they still have some on-premise technologies, on-premise services, they should invest into VPN in order to allow people to connect to those. And of course, one of the things that we are talking about today, and that is collaboration platforms. So having a good collaboration platforms in the company will allow people to communicate more easily in this setup where we are not in the office permanently anymore, and where people are working from home and working from the office depending on the different types of work they do, or different types of the different days in a week and things like that. Dropbox thinks that their aim is to completely eliminate office space for any kind of focused work. So when you need to work on something that requires you to think deeply, to prepare, they believe this is something that you're going to do from home or some other location, but they are going to use their office space for meetings, for brainstormings, as I said previously, for Google, and for these types of collaboration. Microsoft thinks that hybrid work is here. So they definitely think this is something you are going to use Microsoft technologies like Microsoft 365, and that in this setup, you are going to use Microsoft 365, especially Microsoft Teams, to facilitate hybrid work, where you are going to put all these different artifacts inside the Microsoft 365 content, like Office documents and team chats and stuff like that. And then you're going to bring your team together in the Microsoft 365 to create whatever deliveries you're planning to do on your projects. You're going to organize yourselves and give people flexibility to work when they want to work. So Microsoft plans with all these technologies they have to create a place where you can really succeed by delivering hybrid type of work. Some of the security challenges that are definitely being examined by Gartner and other vendors is how do we secure such a workplace that's not in the same office space anymore. So Gartner identified a number of things that could be a problem for you, like authentication. For example, do we rely only on passwords? Do we really need to deploy two-factor authentication, which we of course have to, but do we have all these systems that we use really rely on two-factor authentication, and do we really use the advanced security authentication mechanisms to be sure that our data is secure? Also, we need to think about data classification and protection. So we need to ensure that we are really protecting our valuable data, our confidential data, with all the necessary measures that could be done in your cloud systems. We also need to look into access reviews, access management, to make sure that the right people are connecting to only those resources they really should. We also need to make sure that our people are educated, that they know what potential security threats are available across the globe. And as you know, in 2020, there has been an increase in various types of attacks, especially those targeting older systems that haven't been updated, systems that haven't been patched. And there has been a significant increase in number of ransomware attacks where malicious actors penetrate your system and then try to basically extort you to get you back to the system or get back the data that has been compromised or encrypted so that you don't have access to it. So this is some of the things that once we deploy our collaboration platforms, you definitely need to be sure that we are securing them in the right way. Choosing Microsoft or any of the top vendors that we already mentioned in this session is definitely a good way to go. Having some older system that hasn't been patched, that hasn't been maintained, is probably a risk today, and you should really look into how do we upgrade that systems to the latest versions of Microsoft 365, Slack, Google, whatever you choose as your collaboration platform. So when you talk about Microsoft, one of the interesting things that we need to look into is the pace of adoption of Microsoft 365. So based on the public data that's available for Microsoft daily active users of Microsoft Teams, we can notice that since the start of the pandemic in March 2020, the usage of Microsoft Teams has grown exponentially. So just at the end of April 2021, Microsoft reported 145 million active users using Microsoft Teams on a daily basis. Microsoft, of course, provides a number of different metrics as well, like daily active minutes and number of meetings. So all these metrics are going up, and Microsoft Teams are becoming one of the standards for when it comes to online meetings and collaboration with your peers, with your colleagues, with vendors outside of your organization. Anybody basically, you can join the teams and then talk to the other side without having to be in the physical, let's say, physical space to conduct meetings. There are also investments going into education, where Microsoft Teams are powering schools and universities, allowing them to deliver their content to their students without students being present on premises. There is also this entire drive, which is going to enable people to collaborate in a hybrid mode, meaning that you're still going to use Microsoft Teams as a platform, but some people might be in the office and some people might be remote and connecting via their browsers or their Microsoft Teams clients. But there's a number of new devices coming, hardware devices coming, that are going to allow us to facilitate such communications, from microphones and cameras and all these other things that are certified for Microsoft Teams and allow us to collaborate in a hybrid working place. Microsoft believes that the pandemic was a global shift. And now when we think about new ways of work, we need to focus on three key things. And these things are communication, collaboration, and co-authoring of the content. And for all these three, Microsoft Teams are the central place. So this is the central place where you can facilitate conversations, video calls, whatever. You can collaborate with your teams and co-author content, which is important. So you can bring all your Office documents for your information workers into one central place, and then do collaboration together. And Microsoft doesn't see Microsoft Teams as just a client that helps you do calls and collaboration, but also allows you to bring various other applications inside your Microsoft Teams, because an information worker could use Microsoft Teams as the central application for everything related to collaboration. All these other applications are coming in. So as we go through time, your application bar in Microsoft Teams is slowly increasing, and you see more icons, more applications being added as your organization deploys new workloads that allow you to do more than just collaborate on Microsoft 365 or sorry, Microsoft Office documents. So when we think about governance, which is the topic for today, there's a couple of aspects that you need to look into, and some of the aspects that we are going to discuss during this presentation. So if you think about Microsoft 365 platform, where you can store all these different types of content and different types of documents and stuff, there's a couple of things that you should really look into to understand how is your organization deploying Microsoft 365. One of them, the first thing that comes to mind is access reporting, of course. So if we deploy all these documents, for example, we really need to understand who has access to which documents, which sites, which teams. You need to basically model this according to your either organizational structure or project structure. And IT teams and governance compliance teams should periodically check to verify that only the right people have access to the content that is being stored in those documents. So in Syskit, for example, our applications allow you to do something we call access reviews. Of course, you can use any other technology or manual approach in order to periodically review the access to particular items, to particular sites and stuff like that. On top of that, the IT organizations and leaders should look into how do they manage life cycle of these artifacts. So you might have a project that created a team or site or something like that. So the projects have their typical lifespan, and then you need to make a decision what happens with these artifacts once the project comes to the end. So ideally, you would archive all the content that hasn't been used for a while. Some old stuff just goes to archive so that you keep your organization lean and that you don't have too much information for people coming on board in the following years. Also, in Microsoft Teams, it's so easy to create new content. IT leaders should look into how do they control this and how do they manage the entire provisioning cycle of the things that are being deployed to Microsoft Teams. So you might choose a little bit more organized approach or structured approach where you require some sort of approval process for new artifacts that are being provisioned. So if somebody needs a theme, it might go through an approval process where you need to say IT or compliance need to approve creation of themes, because otherwise you might get into duplicated themes or too many themes that overlap with their functionalities or their memberships. So maybe spend some time thinking ahead what's inside and what needs to be done. Then one of the topics that comes close with access reviews is understanding which external users have access to your systems. This is useful because we really want to bring in external users to collaborate with us. We really want to bring people, external people to work with us. But in some cases, you need to periodically review this and understand who these external users are and what should they still have access to the systems or not. And since we are deploying a lot of technology, we really need to look into usage and adoption. So some of the stuff that's interesting and cool might not be adopted very well in the company. So IT organizations should spend some time analyzing and helping people to better use and adopt these technologies. And this brings me to the end of my presentation. Sorry for the technical issues at the beginning, so we are a little bit late. So I'll close the presentation now, check if there are any questions. And if there are no questions, we will move on to our next presenter.